All right, welcome back to PSL2 Season in Review. Today we're covering the Darth Hemorrhoids. Still don't like that name, but yeah, we have a
I
returning player
definitely
from
laugh at it like every time. I had this like
yeah,
when I was watching Otto's games, I was like, what's his team name again? I'm like, oh yeah, right.
the Darth Hemorrhoids here to clinch the W in the playoffs. Yeah, no, it just doesn't it doesn't roll off the tongue. But they're a returning team from season one.
The
So
Hemorrhoids win the championship.
I'm yeah, Daniel was saying I'm not writing that shit on the trophy, man. But yeah, so in returning he retained the cloister, which is something that we questioned at the time, but I think has proven to be one of the better options that he could, especially because he got back a lot of the Pokemon that he had. Anyway,
Yeah,
the rest of the roster consists of Salamence, Slowking, Staraptor, Swampert, Zapdos, Kyurem Black, Houndoom, Gengar, and there's like a Terrakion and never mind. No, that it was a Mineshaw and a Tangrowth, not a Terrakion and a Frostlass. Anyway, um, that's his
I think it was
roster.
Swampert and Tangrowth for Tracheon.
No, he
Was
has
the trade
Tangrowth.
right?
He has Tangrowth. Oh
Yeah.
no, he got Mineshaw from it. He got Mineshaw.
No, I think he already had Mineshaw. I think that was
Oh
his logic
yeah,
for the
you're
trade
right.
is I don't need
Right.
Terrakion because I have Mineshaw.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, my bad. But yeah, no, that's the roster. Any initial thoughts from you?
I mean, that trade is really the elephant in the room, Otto,
Yeah.
because you did make the mind shot work. I can't say that you didn't. You did make the
Yeah.
mind shot work, but Terrakion is just a beast, dude. You traded the I don't know, like what is that in terms of basketball? Like yeah, it's like trading Damian Lillard, I think. And
Yeah.
like in
Yeah.
return, you got like two bums.
Yeah. Um and the Bucks are doing fine. Well, no, they aren't. Not
Yeah.
right now. Not
Not
this
that you would
season.
understand the
Yeah.
basketball references. I
Um
guess like
we're
how do we make Otto understand it? You traded Caria
yeah,
for
sure. For like
for
delight.
M&S or something. I don't know.
um but yeah, I think and it's not just from like a raw um like talent perspective of the Pokemon. It's not just that Terrakion is just a great Pokemon. It's a great Pokemon that fit well with the type of team that I think Otto would want to run. And like
Yeah.
when I look at the draft and I put it in my my type matrix, my weakness matrix, I see that it's an extremely rocks weak team. It has 6 rock weaknesses after the Houndoom trade, which is the most weaknesses to any type of any team in the entire league.
Even more than Auden to fighting.
Yes. Auden has
Wow, that's
5 fighting
impressive.
weaknesses, and Otto has 6 rock weaknesses. Um, with Houndoom. Uh, Now to counteract that, you also have a good spinner. Well, a good Pokemon that can spin. That's the main thing is
Yeah.
that like you have a spinner and it is a good Pokemon, but it's not really something that wants to be clicking rapid spin all the time.
Yeah,
It's one of
definitely
the
not.
best setup sweepers in the game. So you really want to be doing that and doing damage with your turns, not rapid spinning for your team.
Yeah.
Um, and so because of this extreme hazards weakness with no good spinner, or at least not one that's not awkward, and also a lack of great defensive mons, like your best walls are like Slowking and Tangrowth, which are a fine regenerator core, but can get beat a lot by a lot
Yeah.
of stuff pretty easily.
The Slow King side of that core is much stronger because Slow
y-
King can actually take physical hits, but
yeah,
Tangrowth it cannot take special hits.
yeah,
So
yeah. And so, I mean, with all that, plus like great setup sweepers, great scarfers, some priority in there, I would definitely lean if I were building this team towards a hyper offense construction. Um, and the only thing that you need more to make hyper offense work is a great lead. Something that can set the hazards.
and
Something.
also bust a couple of heads in.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah. There's that. There's something. Terrakion is a great fit, but also the Frostlass that got traded away would have been huge. I mean, spikes, taunt Destiny Bond, it would have done work, I think, if you had played with it as a suicide lead, you know?
Did he trade Frostless?
Yeah. Or maybe it got dropped, but it was on his team at one point. I remember that.
I just looked up Frostless, and the
Yeah.
only in PSL, and the only record I see is my message Snotlax for Frostless.
That's like from season 1, right?
That's from season one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it must have been one of the early traits then, because I swear it was on his roster, but it would have been a great fit. Any suicide lead would have done work with this. But yeah, that's how I would construct the roster. And going into the season, that's definitely what I wanted to see out of it. But we can get into the games and see if that worked out in any way.
Yep.
I have like I watched all the games and I took notes on all of them, and a few things stood out to me. Just off the bat, I made note of every time that he lost the Hazards War, and I made note of every
That's every
time that,
game,
yeah,
basically.
sometimes the game ended and then there were no hazards on the field, but every time there were hazards, they were on his side, at least.
Yeah.
They were very rarely on the other side because you have no good setters.
Yeah.
Swampert gets it, and that's really it. And then another thing I made note of was hyper offense wins, because by my count, 4 out of 6 of his wins just came from
Hyper
playing with pace, sacking things instead of saving them, and just coming at your opponents nonstop. And I think, just like as an overarching theme, that's a great way for this roster to find success.
Yeah. I mean, what he has a great story on the season of just like such a slow start, losing to the eventual 8th place Silver Storm. Though that early in the season, they were looking like maybe they could do some damage,
Yeah,
but did not. In retrospect, the terrible loss for you, Otto,
yeah.
especially given the week 8 match where you just completely annihilate the Storm,
Oh
and
yeah.
what is, I think, one of the most dominating one-sided games of the entire season. It's not a 6-0, but just the way that you immediately on like turn 4 are just dominating, completely winning in that game was super impressive, and I was very proud of you. I'm in general just really proud of how far you've come from like where you started, where you just didn't care, refused to even look up stats online, which I think you still do refuse to look up stats online. That's okay. I don't blame you for that, because I really think that refusing to look stuff up online has given you a degree of creativity that was rewarded in probably your biggest win of the season over the Taurian Shields, where you brought a Dragon Resist Berry to counter the Latios. I would like to see, hopefully in the future, a bit of a synthesis of some homebrews, but also I'd like to see some just stuff that's standard, stuff that works, right? The bread
Yeah.
and butters of a
Like not
Pokemon.
Spadef. Like, yeah, no, and I like
Not
not
Spadef
Spadef
Cloister,
Cloister.
yeah.
Yeah. I think like that win, I had both of those games earmarked. The game versus the Lavender Lord, oh god, the Silver Storm. Sorry. In the final week. That was a great game. It was definitely his best played game of the season. Exploited a really obvious matchup in Auden's configuration and didn't take him long to find it either. And just made no
While he
huge,
was laning in Challenger tier.
yeah, and and there were no huge blunders. Just a solid game. And another hyper offense win.
Man,
Now,
I don't even know if there were particularly any inaccuracies. I think that genuinely he made like a best or an excellent move on every turn.
yeah, yeah, there
Like,
were,
it was a
yeah.
great game, Auto.
And then you contrast that against the game where he won against the Taurian Shields, but didn't like I did everything in his power to keep us on the edge of our seats while winning. I don't know. There was and this comes up a lot in Otto's games where there's just like I have his second game against the Torian Shields where it was a very bad loss. Um,
Yeah,
I just in my notes I wrote
his
who let him
role.
cook because he had two tailwind Pokemon. Um, and
The
then
icy wind tailwind sweeping is
was just
crazy.
crazy. I don't and you see stuff like that and you're like what is
Oh,
what is the thought process even? Are you just like clicking random moves? I have a quote from Otto himself that's like he was speaking to Ethan Bennett about how he team builds and he was like, yeah, so you see like this bottom section where it's like mostly useless moves where it's stuff that's not taken on sets. That's my he said he said like something to the effect of that's my comfort zone. I forgot what actual word he said, but it's like that's his office, man. He just loves to sit down there and look at all the potentially useless moves.
dude,
And
I respect the fuck out of that.
yeah, yeah,
Honestly,
and like he's willing to and I think like the point that you got to is something I really agree with where it's like not looking up sets has kind of fostered this creativity in him that can lead him to have some huge upset wins. I mean, he took a game off me when you never took a game off me last season.
yeah.
And both in a game both in a best of 7 and he took a game off of the clear third Torian Shields. This just off of just like unexpected shit, and
No.
it's good, but and it can get you some clutch wins, but over a best of 7, it's not really going to work out. You're if your opponent is adapting and is expecting the weird shit, then it's not really going to unless you can keep bringing that every single game, another
I think you
innovation.
need to have a balance of like,
But yeah, no, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
yeah,
if if you do that and then you can also mix in some stuff that's just good like you said, it it will really result in I think a lot better results for him.
I mean, I think that from him playing the Gen 5 ladder regularly and random battles regularly, I think that his play has improved to a similar tier to Daniel and Max, who after us, I view that group of
The
three,
best battlers.
yeah, as the
Yeah,
best battlers.
yeah,
Though it is kind of interesting because maybe Daniel is probably the worst of those battlers, but he's the
yeah,
best drafter right now. So
yeah.
it's kind of hard for me to separate. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's probably the third best overall.
for sure. um
Yeah,
yeah, I agree with that. And so 4 of Otto's wins in the season were off of hyper offense. One was off of, you know, just bringing creative shit cooking versus Daniel. And then the last one is the one that I really enjoyed watching the most. And this was his second game versus the glittering insects. It was when
that was
I
a
wasn't
close game.
yeah, I was it was when I wasn't sure how to judge the insects is like battling. I didn't know where to project them. And
Elijah just shat his pants that game
yeah.
so hard, though. Also, I will say,
um there's a sequence in the game though that I want to talk about, and it's where he has detect Zapdos. I don't know why he picked detect over protect. It's just so perfect that he would bring that. um
it's
and
protect with less PP, Dean.
yeah, and it's toxic somehow, and it's in versus a Haxorus, and the Haxorus is dragon dancing, and he
Oh,
somehow
wasn't that the first game?
it might have been the first game that was
It was
played,
the
but
first
it's
game.
second
Yeah,
in the schedule. I don't remember the
yeah.
dates things were played on. But he's playing around the dragon dance and predicting when he'll dance and when he'll attack every single turn correctly, and he's completely outplaying him because he's a better fundamental Pokemon player. But his Zapdos is just toxic, and he's gonna die, and he's not switching it out.
Well,
But he's
also
just staying.
The Haxorus is locked in. Its
Yeah,
choice into the dragon. Yeah, so there's not that much to outplay.
but he's like the guy was switching around, and like he attacks when he switches. It's just I don't know
Also,
a sequence.
Terrakion put in work that game, and then Audio immediately traded it away.
I don't know a
Terrakion literally was
sequence.
a fucking savage that game. It did like 250% total,
Yeah.
and like wasn't like it could have been used better.
Uh-huh. I just don't know a sequence that more perfectly encapsulates Otto's play in the league.
Yeah,
It's just really beautiful. And as for like other stuff, I mean, like that thing I mentioned was a common theme where you have a Pokemon that's toxic or burned, and you leave it in until it dies to the toxic or burn. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think maybe like mentally he thinks like once the thing is status, it's just gonna die eventually anyway, so you might as well just sack it now. Which is usually not correct. I mean, sometimes it can be, but usually it's not right.
Toxic
Um,
is more like a timer where like you can't really leave a Pokemon in for more than 3 turns if they're toxic, and then
yeah.
they will just still continually be worn down. It's kind of an
Hmm.
interesting status.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just that you can't just like give up on a Pokemon, even if it's like the worst status, like slept or paralyzed. Those are definitely worse than burn and toxic, depending on the Pokemon, I guess. But like, you just you keep the Pokemon even if it's paralyzed. Like, it can still do things in the game. You don't just have to let it die. Um,
It does depend. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes it's okay to sack, and we
yeah,
did talk about how like literally earlier how you know at his best you are sacking Pokemon to it when it's right
yeah,
to keep the game throttling, to keep your foot on your opponent's neck,
yeah,
which is I think probably the best example of that would be the win against the Torian Shields.
yeah,
You did get very lucky, but I think that you did a good job at sort of playing to your outs. One mistake that I do habitually see Auto make that I want to address is every time your your dragon is confused after outraging, you press outrage again,
yeah.
and it can work out. And there are times when it's the right play, right?
They got him the win over Daniel.
Yeah. And I think that in that moment, it was the right play. In even game states, in game states where you're favored, it is almost never, ever the right play. Because if you hit yourself, that could be your entire Pokemon right there. And usually these dragons are really powerful and critical late game cleaners for your team, which essentially wants to you because you have such a abundance of offensive threats. What you want to do is you want to use offensive threats to take out critical Pokemon that might be able to wall you, and then use your remaining offensive threats to clean. And if you lose these dragons to you just hitting yourself with outrage, then you have almost no shot at winning an even game after that happens.
Yeah, and that touches on like a concept that we've definitely talked about, where it's just like analyzing like what you need to do to win, and if you need to attack while confused, that is an option, but it's almost never the correct option. The risk reward is just entirely out of whack. You lose a turn and take damage, and they still do a move. Like, it's just not. It's almost never the right thing to do.
It's essentially a death sentence. Like
Yeah,
the Pokemon just doesn't live, generally speaking, unless it's in versus a complete offensive nothing.
yeah. um and even then they could be setting up rocks, they could be statusing you, etc.
Yeah,
You don't want to lose a turn for nothing. That's why you don't use hyper beam. And like,
worse than nothing, actually.
yeah, it's worse than nothing. um I think there's the typical blunders based on like lack of moveset knowledge, like not expecting Mach Punch from Conkeldurr, um not expecting like hidden power moves, refusing to hazard a guess at what the hidden power that just killed his Salamence was. Like, just a lot of regular bad player mistakes. But those, honestly, they aren't that big of a deal, because they're going to happen to almost everyone here, and you make less of them than most people, so it's fine. I just feel like it should be noted when we're going through all of the mistakes.
Yeah. If you want to get to the next level,
Yeah.
then man, I know. So I know you're never going to go to the Pokemon Calculator website, but you should look at the very least into the Helodex extension, which just puts the calculator up right in front of you, and all you have to do is select the Pokemon on your team. You just click the button, and then you select the Pokemon on their team, and it shows you all. Like it will automatically fill in a set that it thinks the opponent might be. It'll automatically know exactly what your Pokemon are. I think that just there's a lot of moments where not a lot, but there's a specific moment I remember where you have Zapdos in against some Pokemon, and you have the option of either using a super effective move that will kill, or using Thunderbolt, which isn't super effective but will also kill and will hit any switch harder. And so, in that moment, what you should be doing always is Thunderbolting because both options kill. And the only, you need to have sort of an intuition for things like this, but also just having the calculator telling you, yeah, they both kill, then I think you'll be able to make connections like that a lot more easily.
Yeah. It's like it's a low risk, it's a low effort way to just easily improve your play.
Yeah.
Now like Otto has a good internal calculator for standard stuff. Like he has a general idea of like when stat moves will kill things, right? Um, and then there's randomly like a physically defensive Mew, and he's like, "What the fuck is that? I've never. Why is it living my outrage? Why is it living two outrages? You know, he just doesn't know." Um,
Mew's a bulky little fuck.
yeah, all the base 100s are. They're surprisingly bulky and strong and fast.
Yeah. They're just versatile.
Yeah, and that's like that's a thing that I think that this draft lacks is versatile Pokemon. Like Cloyster tries to fit into roles. It tries to run rapid spin. It tries to be defensive because Auto tells it to, and it just can't do that very well. It has base 50 HP and 45 special defense. It's not going to live anything. It's going to die
It
to
can take
like
some physical hits,
it can tank some physical hits, but not very well. I mean,
not from Terrakion, for
yeah,
example.
yeah, yeah. I remember that turn too. It was so if you want to lean into the balanced playstyle more, if you feel like that's more your speed, then you definitely want to draft some more defensive Pokemon, some more versatile Pokemon. But if you want to do what I think that you're good at, you should definitely just lean harder into that offensive archetype because that's, I think, where you obviously thrive as a decision maker and as just a Pokemon player.
I think Otto can do both, honestly. I think that what I want to see is just him drafting more critically, right?
Better? Yeah.
Better. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that if we get into a situation in the next year or in the next season, Otto, where you have one of the three best drafts, I don't see why you couldn't have one of the three best records from your play quality. So,
Yeah.
and even if you don't, I could see you, as long as your draft is competitive, right? I think your draft is a little bit one dimensional. And the big thing is that you traded away your best Pokemon for pennies on the dollar. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think another minor thing it's lacking is special attackers, just strong ones. Zapdos is base 125, which is all right. It's not,
it doesn't work.
premium. It does put in work.
It's a good
Um,
Pokemon.
if you have something that can wall that while also still being physically defensive, like an Amoonguss or a Rotom on my end,
Yeah.
then I brought three physically defensive Pokemon versus him twice, and I won both. Like it's not fair. You're putting
Because
yourself in a
also
hole.
Zapdos kind of wants to be a wall too
Yeah,
in his
yeah,
team. It's kind of rough.
yeah. And then Gengar can't really punch holes because it doesn't have strong base power moves, even coming off of a 130 special attack. So it's just, yeah, you're lacking that. You're lacking great defensive mons and great spinner. There's just, yeah, it's one dimensional. But that doesn't mean it can't put in work, and it definitely did in those wins. So I think
You'd be bringing Cloister to almost every game, Otto.
every game. I don't see why you wouldn't.
Because
Even if they have a great wall for it.
Even if it's not doing the shell smash thing, the rapid spin thing can be very critical for you. And sometimes if you allow like significant hazards to be set up, it is very much worth basically losing an entire Pokemon just to get those hazards off.
Yeah.
Because your team is just so cripplingly weak to them.
I think that because of the strength of his draft, he definitely has a chance versus Daniel in the playoffs, but it's not something that I'm like looking forward to putting money on, you know? Like I wouldn't I wouldn't. I mean, even if I had his confidence that he was taking it seriously and doing as much prep work as he can be bothered to do, it's
Kind of looks like
hard.
he is. I
Yeah,
will say it kind of looks
yeah.
like he is. So
So we'll see. I'm excited to watch it. I think that one will be one of the great playoff matches, playoff sets in PSL history. Hopefully, just
we've got a lot of round one bangers, actually. I
yeah,
think.
yeah. Yeah, I think we have some good matchups for the playoffs.
There's really only one non matchup or
Yeah,
non series. Like
yeah,
even my series where it's like, oh, on the surface level, 12-2 team versus 11
11.
team.
Yeah,
But
there's some stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
there's some wrinkles.
I'm scared.
Yeah,
I'm prepping. I'm taking it seriously. So
yeah,
whereas you, I think you could fall asleep, wake up that morning, make a team, and
yeah.
it's just kind of like, yeah, I'll just put a fighting type in and I'll win.
I don't have any. I just have to put fighting type moves.
Hey man,
um,
the Jirachi puts in hella work too.
yeah, the Jirachi goes him. But I think aside from just glazing his player skill some more, that's really all the analysis I have for Otto. I mean, we can do that if you have some more games, but I think that's
I think we've talked about a lot of the things that I want to talk about in terms of the recurring mistakes, commending him on his strength while also recognizing where those strengths might come from and why they're also a weakness in a way.
yeah,
But
yeah,
and those are really the things I want to touch on, and just that I am optimistic about Otto in the next season.
yeah.
So
Just needs a little bit more research done before the drafting process, and just set yourself up for success. That's all you have to do, because when you get put into the situations, even that you aren't that familiar with, you can think your way out of them pretty easily on the spot. You just need the tools to be able to perform. That's it.
yeah,
So yeah.
you're a powerful gamer, Otto. I have faith in you.
So that's the review for the Darth Hemorrhoids done. I think we'll come back tomorrow with the Nimbasa Shock, Kevin's theme. Sound good?
Mhm.
All right, cool. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.